Hello and welcome to this lesson about multiplying and dividing integers. Now, there are some basic rules here, but what I'm hoping to do is use these counters to kind of demonstrate why these rules work, okay? And so one thing that helps us, or there are two things I want to start by saying. First, we have to remember that the yellow side is positive 1 and the red side is negative 1. The second thing I want to keep in mind is that negatives mean opposite. So you have to do the opposite whenever you see a negative sign. All right? So now with that being said, let's take a look at something like 2 times negative 3. And let's explain why this has to be negative 6. So what we're going to do is we're going to use our counters. If we have negative 3, that means I'm supposed to have 3 of these negative counters, 3 red sides, right? Well, 2 times that means I have 2 groups of these negative 3s. So I'll take a second group, and what I now have here is the same thing as saying 2 times negative 3, because keep in mind, multiplication means we have grouped something together. So we have these 2 groups of negative 3, and we count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But they're all red, and that's why it's got to be negative 6. Now, let's switch it up a little bit. And let's say we're dealing with negative 2 times negative 3. Now, here's where it gets a little more complicated, is that we're going to have our group of 3, a negative 3, and we have 2 groups of them, but we have 2 negative signs. And so what that means is that we have to do the opposite of it. And so the way this works is you pick one to be sort of, your starting point, and we pick the other one to tell us how many groups we need to have. Well, if this is negative 2, that means that we will have to have 2 groups of these negative 3s, but negatives mean opposite. So that means that we need to flip them all around. And when we flip them all around, we're left with positive 6. Now, the easy way to do this is just to know that a negative times a negative is a positive. But this is hopefully showing you why and how that works. And it all hinges on the idea that negatives mean opposite. All right, now let's work with division. Let's say that we have negative 8 divided by 2. So if we have negative 8, I have to have 8 of these red pieces. Just like that, right? Okay, now, what does division mean? Division means that we're going to break things into groups. We don't have multiple groups, but we're going to take this and cut it into 2 pieces. And so when I do this, I'll split this up into 2, and then I have to ask myself, how many, after I put it into 2 different groupings, how much do I have in one of them? And when I do that, that gives me a group of negative 4. So this equals negative 4, which is what this happens to be. And what we're going to see is that if we change this part of it, so we start off with our negative 8, and now we end up dividing it by negative 2, we will have to break it into 2 groups. And we're wondering, how much again is in each group, but that negative sign means we must do the opposite. And so that's exactly what we do, is we have to flip over every single one of these, and what we get in one of these groups is a group of positive 4. And so this is how the whole negative or positive negative rules work with integers by using counters. Hopefully this has helped you realize how, or sort of the why behind it. Again, you just really have to know that a positive times a positive will be positive. A negative times a negative is positive. But if the signs are different, it'll become negative. So good luck with your homework or practice, and let me know if you have any questions.